Safety standards take center stage following Sunday's massive earthquake, while the president apologizes to leaders of the worst affected areas. More than 100 schools have been affected. For some, the only option is demolition. Also ahead, the father of a 2-year-old who died from COVID after waiting 81 minutes for an ambulance demands an investigation. And from bigger is better to niche reads, we look at the creative ways independent bookstores are fighting for their survival in Taiwan. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We begin with the aftermath of the magnitude 6.8 earthquake that rocked eastern Taiwan on Sunday. The quake, which killed 1 person, has caused widespread damage and left leaders of the 2 worst affected counties furious at the central government. Safety standards are also in the spotlight. Engineers near the epicenter are investigating why a building and a bridge that had just undergone repairs collapsed. Stash Butler begins our coverage.
This 3-story building is the only one toppled in Uli Township by Sunday's 6.8 magnitude quake. Engineers say the bottom floor caved in because of a lack of support.
它就是一个落层，它地震来的时候容易扭转，那扭转的时候，它也更容易造成它的崩坏，是一个很相对的危险的建筑物。
Rescuers saved everyone inside, but there are calls for authorities to assess the safety of all the remaining old buildings in the area. Outside the town, and just 30 kilometers from the epicenter, a collapsed bridge has locals asking the same question, especially since it had been closed just 3 months ago for earthquake repairs. 3 people were injured when it fell. At a disaster response meeting, the leaders of the 2 worst affected counties say they were ignored by the government.
8点钟听他们讲话嘛，先是徐国勇嘛，然后苏贞昌，然后蔡总统讲完之后，我们就准备要讲说，我们的状况怎么样的时候，他们就结束了。
President Tsai has apologized. She says there were issues with the video call.
工作人员忙碌，沟通不足，以至于连线作业是有一些疏失，没有能够与2位县长以及救灾的团队有沟通的机会。对此呢， 我要向2位县长以及在花莲跟台东的救灾团队表示歉意。
For now, the county leaders have set the issue aside. They say they're working with the government to get life back to normal and make sure Taiwan's roads and buildings are secure before the next big quake hits. James Rayner and Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
Sunday's quake has had a devastating effect on schools across the country's south and east. Engineers have been called in to assess the safety of school buildings, but in some cases, demolition is the only option. John Van Trieste has the story.
This is Chunri Elementary School. It's just 40 kilometers from the epicenter of the 6.8 magnitude quake that rocked Taiwan on Sunday. And though engineers say the classrooms are safe, students will be studying from home this week. Some parts of the building have been damaged beyond repair.
所有的老师都要积极动员。那我也请社区能够到学校来协助，先把教室里面的空间先把它整理好。
Across the country, a total of 148 schools have been affected by the earthquake. The damage is estimated to cost more than $700,000. Schools in eastern Taiwan, where the quake hit hardest, have seen the most disruption. At Dapo Elementary School, just kilometers from the epicenter, earthquake damage also caused the school to close.
教室里面的电脑萤幕，还有一些柜体，几乎都是倒塌坏损的状况。那刚刚也看到我们幼儿园，它的那个天花板的轻钢架也掉落。
The disruption comes just weeks after students went back to school after summer break. And it's raising concerns about the safety of schools in one of Taiwan's most earthquake-prone regions. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
China has reacted angrily to Joe Biden's recent comments on Taiwan. The US president told an interviewer on US network CBS that US troops would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese attack.
美方言论严重违反一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定，严重违背美方作出的不支持台独的重要承诺，向台独分裂势力发出严重错误信号。中方表示强烈不满和坚决反对，已向美方提出严正交涉。
After Biden made the comments, the White House insisted that U.S. policy toward Taiwan had not changed. Taiwan's foreign ministry meanwhile thanked Biden for the U.S. government's, quote, rock-solid security commitment to Taiwan. Taiwan's President Tsai says strengthening the country's cybersecurity requires a comprehensive approach. She was speaking at the opening ceremony of Cybersec 2022, a 3-day conference in Taipei which brings together cybersecurity experts and over 250 companies in the industry. It's the first Cybersec conference to be held in Taiwan since U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the country, which prompted a wave of cyber attacks on Taiwanese government organizations and private enterprises.
做治安不能够单打独斗，必须要依靠联防。政府正加快脚步，全力打造更完善的治安联防体系。
Working for a free and sovereign Taiwan is important for the entire world. That was the message from U.S. Congressman Brad Sherman in a speech at the 40th anniversary celebration of the Formosa Association for Public Affairs, or FAPA. FAPA is the largest grassroots Taiwan advocacy group in the U.S. and plays a key role in helping to push for Taiwan-friendly legislation in Congress. Among those at the celebration were Taiwan Representative to the U.S. Xiaobi Kim, legislator Wang Dingyi and Congressman Steve Chabot. Senator Bob Menendez, co-sponsor of the Taiwan Policy Act, and Taiwan's Vice President Lai Ching-te also addressed the organization by video link.
Formosa Association of Public Affairs has been successful again and again in doing what we are doing here today, and that brings us together. And that is to work for free, democratic, and sovereign Taiwan. It's important for the United States, it's important for the people of Taiwan, it's important for the Indo-Pacific region, it's important for the entire world.
The father of a 2-year-old that died of COVID in April is demanding an official report on why it took an ambulance more than 1 hour to respond to his emergency call for help. He says the delay ultimately caused the death of his son and wants to know who was responsible. Jaime Ocon reports.
我对这个事情的发生感同身受以外，不但会去反省跟检讨。
New Taipei Mayor Hou You-yi is in the hot seat. A city councilor has come to him with a list of 4 demands from the father of a 2-year-old child that died of COVID. They want to know why the child had to wait 81 minutes for an ambulance to arrive.
你当时说你们没有做行政调查报告，你现在说你有行政报告交指挥中心，那你把议会当什么？
The child at the heart of the incident is a 2-year-old named Un. 5 months ago, when he was dealing with severe COVID-19 symptoms, his parents called for an ambulance. But that ambulance did not arrive for an hour and 21 minutes. Un died 5 days later, becoming the first child to die from the virus in Taiwan. And his father, identified as Mr. Lin, says it was the long wait for help to arrive that ultimately led to the death of his son. He explains his 4 demands.
厘清责任，卫生局的出勤记录，人员的确切值班状况，请公开，公布防疫派遣中心当天的值班记录，发起行政调查，并提交调查报告。
Last month, Mr. Lin filed a claim for a symbolic $1 Taiwan or 3 US cents compensation, hoping that it would prompt the government to respond. But for now, the family continues to wait. Alex Chen and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is freezing electricity prices in a bid to keep inflation in check. The Economy Ministry says there will be no increases from October through next March. Prices will be kept at the current 10 US cents per kilowatt hour. The last price hike was in July. Looking ahead, increased summer power pricing for the country's 25,000 biggest electricity consumers will be extended next year. It will last from mid-May to mid-October, a month longer than usual. This is expected to reduce energy consumption by 500,000 kilowatts, equivalent to the output of one generator at the country's largest coal-fired power plant. Like the rest of the world, food prices in Taiwan are rising amid soaring global inflation, and eggs have been hit especially hard. The government is now taking steps to improve transparency in the supply chain and reduce the amount customers have to shell out.
在生产资讯里面，从每个月来呈现的一个资讯，改变成每一周来滚动检讨，然后迅速的呈现，反映目前产蛋季的一个资讯。 跟目前鸡蛋生产量的一个情况。
Wholesale prices for eggs in the capital are currently about $1.60 for 600 grams. That's up from about a little over $1 a year ago. Prices had boiled over earlier this year ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday, hitting $1.40. Bookstores are facing a shrinking market in Taiwan thanks to the popularity of digital reading and online shopping. Times are especially tough for independent stores, and that's led to some creative ideas on how to survive in a difficult market. Yu Jinghuang explains.
This may look like a regular chain bookstore, but it's the newest branch of an independent seller that started small in Taipei. They now carry over 20,000 books. The store's founder says going big is their way of surviving in a changing market. They have enough space now to also offer snacks and host events.
我们很希望它是独立书店跨百平书店的第一间，希望可以开创出新的模式。因为独立书店一般它的规模不大，可是青岛书店因为已经开到第10间，我们希望可以展开新的规模化的经济。
With more people buying online, other independent bookstores are also competing to survive. This one has opted to stay small and highlight something that can't be replicated online, a tangible picture book experience.
立体书啊，或是触摸书，就是有不同的透过书籍的装帧跟材质去传递感受的一个部分。所以，在这部分，我们觉得绘本它是一个蛮特殊的类型。
It seems customers go to different sellers to fulfill different needs. Data shows that the best sellers at independent bookstores are generally literature, particularly those written by local writers, while online booksellers do best in the categories of math psychology and investment or money management. Once considered a dying trade, there are still over 200 independent bookstores in Taiwan. No matter how many customers are lured away by other options, there are still those who find the physical experience hard to replace. Patrick Chen and Eugene Huang for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up here on TaiwanPlus, praising the past in order to criticize the present. Hongkongers queue for hours to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth.
我想要音乐改变这个世界嘛，那其实不是老板帮我想，那个是我自己讲。我很喜欢像 Bob Dylan、John Lennon 或是 Bob Marley 那一种有影响力的音乐家，那我就在幻想说，我是不是也可以跟他们一样干大事。
下雨的晚上，那个时候就开始试着帮他找出属于黄界的品牌核心，所以那时候我们抓出3个关键字，就是幽默、温暖、热情，是那个时候才开始有比较明确的去定调它。
好，我问凯特说，我有什么该说的还没说，他讲卖票，我听懂了啊。
虽然说，在这个追求音乐的过程，还有产业，会一直给人很多不同的那种冲击，但是我觉得他是一个很努力在保有自己喜欢音乐的热情的那一个。另外的角度，他其实也有某部分他的对生命的一些焦虑，他常常也会不太知道自己有多好。
你说写出很多温暖人心的歌，那个纯粹是因为我自己心里过不去，就是其实我的歌很多都是
在解决我自己遇到的问题。所以我的歌词里面有很多我跟你，其实那个你都是我。我好像在对人家说什么，其实我是在对我自己说，你应该要这样子。现在什么想吗？完全不敢说我要用音乐改变这个世界，但是我还是会持续的做这件事情，因为改变1、2个人也算是改变了这个世界的一部分吧。可以让你快乐的时候更快乐，可以让你难过的时候不那么难过。又或者是某一首歌在你的人生里象征着某一个时光，那我也改变了这个世界。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Queen Elizabeth II has been laid to rest after a lavish state funeral in the British capital. Tens of thousands of mourners lined the streets of London for a glimpse of the procession carrying the Queen's coffin to Westminster Abbey. Her funeral service was attended by world leaders, including US President Joe Biden, and watched by millions around the world. No delegation from Taiwan was at the funeral. Only representatives from countries with which the UK has official diplomatic relations were invited. The monarch, who passed away earlier this month after 70 years on the throne, was buried beside her late husband, Prince Philip, on the grounds of Windsor Castle. Hongkongers have been queuing for hours to pay tribute to the late monarch. It's one of the biggest displays of affection for the Queen outside the UK. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick reports.
Hours-long queues snake through the streets as throngs of Queen Elizabeth's former subjects watch the late monarch's state funeral, waiting to pay tribute. But this is not London, nor anywhere else in the Commonwealth of Nations. It is Hong Kong, once a British colony, now a special administrative region of China.
Because I was growing up during the colonies era, and then I thank for the Queen to lead all the British politicians to give us a stable Hong Kong, a civilized Hong Kong, and she, they give us a free education and then a well-constructed legal system.
Many of the thousands lining up to sign the Book of Condolences at the British Consulate General look back on rule by London as a golden age.
英女王即係仲係英國我叫做統治緊嘅香港嘅嗰段期間，我會覺得係叫做算係97之後，97年之前算係最美好嘅一段時間，因為佢各方面嘅自由都俾到好盡。如果有個對比嘅，即係大家都話冇對比冇傷害，而家有對比，我就覺得。
This nostalgia is not shared in every corner of the former British Empire. Historians say Hong Kong's experience in the late 20th century was an anomaly.
The sort of reinvigorated colonialism we saw in Hong Kong from the 1960s onwards was really in stark contrast to the dismantling of the British Empire that was going ahead everywhere else. There was a sort of hopefulness in the air, and that carried on for several decades. And then that coincided, of course, in Hong Kong with people arriving from mainland China in the 50s and 60s, trying to get themselves a better life. And so there is naturally an association with good times, if you like.
These last few decades of British rule saw the emergence of a welfare state, public housing, universal education, and a booming economy. It also produced much of what is recognized today as Hong Kong culture.
The whole of that moment was accompanied by local Cantonese-speaking Hong Kongers developing a new kind of culture. So basically, the British had left open the opportunity to develop this new Chineseness, and local people took it and invested it with their own language. And it's that aspect of Hong Kong identity which was allowed and even encouraged by the British, which is now under threat in Hong Kong.
2 years after Beijing's imposition of the national security law, there are over 1,000 political prisoners in Hong Kong, according to the Hong Kong Democracy Council's Political Prisoners Database. The United Nations Human Rights Commission has called for the repeal of the law, which is used to jail or exile the political opposition. Despite the outpouring of grief, some say Britain also bears blame for surrendering its subjects to this fate.
Late colonialism was a unique kind of colonialism, and it was a kind of colonialism that didn't end happily for the people who'd been colonized. There was no moment, not even a sliver of light between the British leaving and the Beijing authorities basically taking overall control. So I think since 1997, we've been living in a sort of Alice in Wonderland landscape where people were hoping for the best, but the best was never ever going to be possible. The Queen's reign didn't really do that much good in the end for Hong Kong people. Indeed, we see today that the institutions, such as the judicial system left behind by the British, has indeed failed them.
With protests in Hong Kong extinguished by ongoing COVID gathering bans and the national security law, the mourning of the Queen has become a unique venue, a chance to praise the past in order to criticize the present. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Hong Kong police have laid charges against the head of the city's leading journalists group, days ahead of his planned move to the United Kingdom. Ronson Chan, chairman of the Hong Kong Journalists Association, was detained by plainclothes police earlier this month while he was reporting on a story. He requested the officers identify themselves before handing over his ID card. He was then arrested and handcuffed. On Monday, he was formally charged with obstructing police officers over the encounter. Chan, formerly an editor with now shuttered Stand News, will have to appear in court later this week. He says the charges make it unclear whether he will be allowed to travel to the UK as planned to take up a fellowship at the University of Oxford at the end of the month. 2 people have been confirmed dead in Japan after super typhoon Nanmadol battered the country. Over 100 people have been injured and hundreds of thousands left without power as gusts reached over 200 kilometers per hour. Some areas of central Japan are forecast to receive up to 300 millimeters of rain in the 24 hours before Tuesday evening. Over 9 million people were initially told to evacuate their homes ahead of the storm. Taiwan is home to a wide variety of indigenous bird species, and there's one thing many have in common with birds around the world: a love of bird baths. In TaiwanPlus's series Formosa Forevermore, we take a look at some of these avian ablutions.
All birds love taking baths, and any little waterhole by a river can become a bath for small birds. The Taiwan Yuhaina, for one, likes to bathe here together, and their social nature allows them to accept an uninvited varied tit. To the medium-large-sized Taiwan blue magpie, however, the water for their baths needs to be deeper for maximum enjoyment. So they choose to bathe by ponds or rivers. Yet how deep must the water be? Usually they aren't picky, as long as it is enough to wet their bellies when they crouch and to splash up their bodies when they flap their wings. As for the Malayan night heron, which lives almost entirely in Taiwan's parks, puddles that form in parks after showers make the perfect baths. The crested goshawk also takes advantage of these puddles, for more and more of them have moved into urban parks in Taiwan lately. Not all baths have to be on the ground, especially for birds like the Taiwan barbet, who are seldom found on ground level. For a nice bath, they must hope for puddles to form in tree holes. Yet there are also birds who take lightning-quick baths and dread being discovered. Who? Why, the highly alert white-bellied Erponus. The main purpose of taking baths is to keep feathers clean, because birds' feathers are not only useful for flying, but also keep them warm and dry. They are also good for presentation and courtship. Therefore, pretty feathers are the best sign of a bird's health. Though sometimes the order of bath-taking reflects dominance, making apparent who's stronger and who's weaker. Since this yellow tit is more dominant, of course it gets to bathe slowly, like a boss. These three are the smallest birds from the tit family in Taiwan, the black-throated tit. Since they are small and skittish, they only dare bathe in the shallowest waters. Unlike the notoriously fierce rulers of Taiwan's forests, the Taiwan blue magpie. Look at how immersed it is as it bathes.
Team Taiwan has pulled out all the stops at an international tug of war competition to claim 4 gold medals. The titles were all won by women's teams at the Tug of War World Outdoor Championships in the Netherlands. The 4 golds tie the national team's best record at the event. They also hauled in 1 silver and 1 bronze medal. Many of the same athletes had scored multiple gold medals at the World Games in the US in July. Taiwan is set to host the World Indoor Championships in 2026. Love is in the air at Taipei Zoo, and the new couple are now living together. 2 Malayan tapirs named Putri and Morshu were introduced earlier this year and began sharing a home in May when caretakers at the zoo moved the couple in together. They then used special wax markers to draw on Putri's flanks to find out just how close the couple were getting, and the markers rubbed off, a sign the pair have been mating. It's hoped baby tapirs could be on the way soon. Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, we leave you with images of a French tree climber challenging a 187-metre skyscraper in Paris to celebrate his 60th birthday. Stay safe and see you next time.